Today's tech news moves fast, but understanding it shouldn't be hard. That's why Snarful Solutions Group brings you Connecting the Dots, where we break down what's happening in tech and why it matters to you. Now, let's dive in with your hosts.
What if I told you that the government actually wants to treat the smartphone in your pocket with the exact same, legal scrutiny as a dangerous weapon?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And that within just 3 months, the people who build these everyday devices could face actual prison time if they don't install this mandatory unbypassable surveillance software directly into the operating system.
I mean, it sounds exactly like a dystopian science fiction novel, right? But it is currently playing out at the highest levels of international law.
It really is. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Connecting the Dots, your daily breakdown of tech news and its everyday impact. I'm Alex.
And I'm Morgan.
And we are broadcasting live from the Snarful Solutions Group studios right here in Sacramento, California. Today is Monday, June 8th, 2026.
Happy Monday, everyone.
Yeah, happy Monday. We're tracking a massive collision between lawmakers and the technology sector today. But before we get into that, let's get you caught up on the morning briefing.
Always a good idea.
Right. So if you are traveling across the U.S. today, definitely check weather.gov before you head to the airport. There are currently 230 active weather alerts nationwide.
Wow, 230.
Yeah, and 146 of those are over land. Locally, though, here in Sacramento, we're looking at a much calmer picture. It's going to be partly sunny, a high of 84 degrees, and a light breeze of 5 to 14 miles per hour.
Honestly, a really good day to step away from the screens, especially if you spent your weekend, agonizing over the financial markets.
Oh, man, that is no joke. Last Friday was a pretty brutal way to close out the trading week.
It really was.
Yeah, the Dow Jones took a heavy hit. It closed down 743.24 points, which is a drop of 1.44%, finishing at 50,866.78.
Ouch.
Yeah. And the S&P 500 felt the pain too. It closed down 62 points, or 2.04% to end the day at 7,383.74.
Yeah, the traditional markets definitely saw a sharp contraction. However, the crypto sector painted a slightly different picture over the weekend.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Looking at the numbers for today, Monday, Bitcoin opened at 63,310.30 and actually managed to close a bit higher at 63,661.59.
Okay, not bad.
Right, so that is a modest bump of 351.29 points, putting it up about 0.55%.
Well, I mean, we will take whatever green we can get on the screen,
That's
right?
Exactly.
And speaking of the weekend, our regional baseball teams put up some really solid numbers. The SF Giants edged out the Chicago Cubs 2-1, with Keaton Wynn taking the victory on the mound.
Nice.
And down the bay, the Oakland A's delivered a flawless 5-0 shutout against the Houston Astros. Gage Jump took the win for that one.
Good for them.
Yeah. And for our local basketball fans, you didn't miss anything. There was no NBA game for the Sacramento Kings yesterday.
Just a quiet Sunday on the courts, which is honestly a stark contrast to the absolute storm brewing in the technology sector this morning.
Seriously, let's unpack this. We have a really fascinating narrative through line today.
Yeah.
Because we are witnessing this massive simultaneous push and pull. On one side, you have high-stakes government regulation desperately trying to build these strict legal walls around the digital devices we use every day.
Right.
And then on the other side, the biggest technology giants are actively breaking artificial intelligence out of the software realm. They're pouring it directly into the physical, three-dimensional world.
It's wild. We are literally watching lawmakers fight to contain the digital present, while hardware engineers are pouring concrete to build an autonomous physical future.
It is such a wild juxtaposition. But before we get into our Morning Star Tech Report, today's episode is brought to you by Strong Coffee, the premium instant coffee that tastes like a traditional brew but is packed with 15 grams of protein, MCTs, and adaptogens like ashwagandha. Get clean, sustained energy without the jitters. Use promo code SNARFL for 20% off at strongcoffeecompany.com.
All right, so our first story takes us to the United Kingdom, where the government is issuing this monumental ultimatum to big tech.
Yeah, this is intense.
It is. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has basically given Apple and Google a strict 3-month deadline, they have until September, to install software that blocks explicit images on children's devices.
And the threat here is not just like a regulatory slap on the wrist, right?
Not at all. If they fail to comply, legislation will force compliance, complete with hefty financial fines and potential criminal liability for tech CEOs. We are talking about actual jail time.
Wait, Jail time for building a phone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And to understand why a modern democracy is threatening tech executives with prison, you really have to look at the sheer terrifying volume of the problem they are facing.
Okay, lay the numbers out for us.
So the National Crime Agency in the UK is receiving 1,700 referrals every single week regarding child sexual abuse material.
Wow, 1,700 a week? That's awful.
It is. But the most jarring data point here is the origin of that material. 9 out of 10 of those images are actually self-generated by children.
Okay, I really want to make sure I'm grasping that correctly. You're saying 90% of the illicit material being intercepted isn't adults sharing predatory photos they took of victims. It is the kids taking the photos of themselves.
Yes, exactly. These are children who are being tricked or coerced or straight up blackmailed by online predators.
Oh man, that's just sick.
It's an absolute epidemic of sextortion, and it's often orchestrated by organized criminal networks. The scale of this specific problem is actually why former Safeguarding Minister Jess Phillips previously resigned from her post.
Oh, right, I remember that.
Yeah, she was protesting the delays in government action. But now that this ultimatum is public, she is projecting that this device-level intervention could eliminate 91% of online child sexual abuse.
Wow, okay, I completely see the horror of the problem, but I am really struggling to understand why Apple and Google are being treated as hostile actors here.
How do you mean?
Well, if we look at the underlying technology, Apple essentially already built this.
They did, yeah.
Right. They introduced a feature called communication safety way back in iOS 15.2. It uses on-device machine learning to blur nude photos and videos by default for kids across Messages, FaceTime, and AirDrop.
That's true.
So it's like mandating that automakers install seatbelts in cars that already have them installed. If the technology is already sitting there in the phone, why is the Prime Minister threatening to throw someone like Apple's hardware chief, John Turnus, into a British prison over it? Isn't Apple already compliant?
It's a great point, but it's easy to assume that having the technology is the exact same as enforcing the policy. And there is a massive legal gulf between the two.
Break that down for me.
What Apple built is a parental control feature. It's a tool that exists on the phone, sure, but it requires a user to engage with it or an adult to actively opt a child into it.
I see.
Yeah, so Prime Minister Starmer is demanding a paradigm shift. He wants this to be an unbypassable mandatory surveillance net hard-coded into the operating system itself.
Meaning the device manufacturer becomes the active police force, rather than just the company that built the phone.
Exactly. Historically, the legal burden sat with the platforms. Like, the social media companies were responsible for moderating what users posted on their servers.
Right, platform moderation.
But what this ultimatum does is shift the liability to the physical piece of hardware in your pocket. The government wants the phone's operating system to act as the ultimate gatekeeper, analyzing the image locally before it even reaches a platform.
Which honestly brings up a massive red flag for me.
The privacy aspect.
Yeah. If my phone is constantly scanning every single photo I take to decide if it's explicit, how is that not a total invasion of privacy? Even if Apple claims the scanning happens locally on the device and never goes to a cloud server, it still means my own phone is watching me.
And that is the exact alarm being sounded by civil liberties groups right now. Organizations like Big Brother Watch are calling this proposed mandate the death of anonymity and internet privacy.
I can see why.
Because the structural problem here is age verification. To force a phone to blur images for a child, the phone first has to definitively know that the user is actually a child.
Right.
And to know that, you essentially have to mandate device-level identity verification for every single citizen.
Wow, so you would have to upload a passport or a driver's license just to unlock your phone's camera.
Exactly. And the fear is the slippery slope. If a government can legally force a manufacturer to build an operating system that scans for explicit images, what stops a future government from forcing that same operating system to scam for political dissent or, banned books?
That is terrifying.
It really blurs the line between protecting vulnerable children and establishing a state-mandated surveillance apparatus right inside your pocket.
For you listening, whether you are a working professional designing these complex systems or just a parent buying your kid their first phone, this is a seismic shift. It fundamentally changes the relationship between you, your hardware, and the law. But let's follow that logic for a second. If the UK government is attempting to turn the physical hardware itself into an unbypassable content filter, doesn't that make policing the apps installed on that hardware somewhat redundant?
You would think so, but the UK is actually attacking this from both ends simultaneously. While they are threatening hardware manufacturers over the operating systems, they haven't abandoned regulating the platforms where kids spend their time.
Right. Moving up the digital chain to our second story, Prime Minister Starmer is reportedly planning to announce an outright ban on harmful social media platforms for children under 16.
Yeah, this is huge.
And this comes on the heels of a very similar legislative move in Australia last December. And again, the stated goal is to combat that same sextortion epidemic alongside the broader mental health crisis driven by addictive algorithmic design.
And this is rapidly becoming a global consensus. It isn't just the UK and Australia. A recent survey out of Switzerland showed that 94% of respondents support far stricter safeguards for minors.
94%. That's basically everyone.
Pretty much. And their interior minister is openly considering similar bans. The concept of a government-mandated digital curfew is gaining serious momentum.
But I have to push back on the proposed mechanics of this ban, because the reporting suggests that the government wants to ban teenagers from the quote-unquote harmful platforms, but still allow them access to safer platforms.
Right, that's the proposed loophole.
How does that make any logical sense? If you suddenly lock millions of teenagers out of the massive mainstream platforms, won't they just migrate en masse to whatever the government deems a safe platform?
Most likely, yes.
And wouldn't millions of unsupervised teenagers flooding a safe space effectively turn that safe space into the new Wild West?
That is the fatal flaw in the tiered platform approach. History has repeatedly shown us that the culture of the internet follows the user base.
Always.
The moment a niche, heavily moderated platform suddenly absorbs millions of new young users, the bad actors, the predators, and the toxic algorithms will inevitably follow the traffic.
It's just a game of whack-a-mole.
Exactly. But beyond the sociology of how teenagers behave online, the logistical nightmare of enforcing a national ban is just staggering.
Because, again, how do you even prove someone is under 16 without destroying everyone else's privacy in the process?
You really can't. That is the core issue. How does the government actually enforce this ban? Do they mandate that internet service providers block the traffic?
Good luck with that.
Right. Do they force the app stores to restrict downloads based on age? Do they force the social media companies to require a government ID scan for every single account creation?
It's practically impossible without huge overreach.
Every single one of those enforcement mechanisms requires a massive, invasive data collection infrastructure across the entire nation's internet.
It creates a deeply complex reality for families, too. I mean, parents are already exhausted trying to navigate screen time limits and digital curfews on their own Wi-Fi routers.
Oh, for sure. It's a daily battle.
If the government steps in and mandates a ban, it sounds like the collateral damage is going to be the privacy of every adult who uses the internet.
It forces a choice between digital safety and digital anonymity. You really can't have both.
What strikes me as so fascinating about all of this is the timeline. Europe is spending incredible amounts of political capital frantically trying to regulate the digital technologies of today. You know, the social apps and the smartphones.
Right, the stuff that's already here.
Exactly. But when we pivot to our third story, we see that the technology sector isn't waiting around to see how software regulation pans out. They're already laying the concrete for the technologies of tomorrow.
This is where we see a complete architectural shift. While governments are focused on digital software, the titans of the tech industry are focused on physical hardware.
The physical stuff.
Yeah. NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang and LG Group Chairman Kukwang Mo recently held a major summit in Seoul. And this was actually their second meeting in just 3 days to dramatically expand their artificial intelligence cooperation.
2 meetings in 3 days. That's moving fast.
Extremely fast. Their stated goal is to build out what they are calling an AI factory to advance physical AI.
Okay, let's look closer at those terms, because the jargon in this space gets incredibly dense.
It really does.
When they say physical AI, we need to be clear about what that actually means.
Yeah.
We are no longer talking about a chatbot on a screen that summarizes your emails or, like, generates a picture of a cat.
Right, we are way past chatbots.
Physical AI means artificial intelligence that interacts with the real three-dimensional world. We are talking about LG's Cloyd robots physically doing chores in a household.
Doing the dishes, folding laundry, that kind of thing.
Exactly. We are talking about fully autonomous vehicles navigating complex city traffic and automated smart factories where machines handle the entire logistics chain from raw materials to final delivery.
And to make that happen, you have to give a physical machine a digital brain capable of reasoning. And that is why LG is integrating NVIDIA's most advanced robotic frameworks into their hardware.
Which frameworks are we talking about here?
They are utilizing platforms with names like Isaac, GR00T, and Cosmos.
Okay, stop right there. Walk me through those, because to the average person, those just sound like sci-fi movie references.
They kind of do, yeah.
What does a framework like Cosmos actually do for a physical robot?
Think of Cosmos like the training program from the movie The Matrix, but for robots.
Oh, that's a cool way to look at it.
Yeah, it generates hyper-realistic synthetic data. So let's say you want a robot to learn how to crack an egg without crushing it. If you train it in the real world, it's going to destroy thousands of eggs and make a massive mess.
Right, you'd have a kitchen covered in yolk.
Exactly. So Cosmos creates a perfect physics-accurate virtual simulation where the AI can practice cracking a digital egg 1,000,000 times. It learns the exact pressure required, makes all its mistakes in the simulation, and then transfers that perfected knowledge into a physical robotic arm.
That is wild, and I assume the GR0DT framework acts as the operating system for that arm.
Close. GR0D is a foundational model designed to give robots human-like reasoning. Instead of just following a pre-programmed script, GR0T allows a robot to understand spoken instructions, observe human movements, and figure out how to execute complex, multi-step tasks in unpredictable physical environments.
Okay, so I understand the software side of giving a robot a brain, but I'll admit I am deeply confused about the infrastructure side of this announcement.
The AI factory part.
Yeah. Why do NVIDIA and LG need to build a massive AI factory? Why can't these smart robots just run on a standard lithium-ion battery and connect to the existing cloud like my smartphone does?
You have to look at the physics of it. The sheer volume of data required to process real-time physical environments is astronomical.
Because it's taking in so much more input.
Right. Your smartphone only processes the data you give it. A physical AI robot is constantly processing high-definition video, LiDAR sensors, spatial physics, and audio all at once in real time just to keep from running into a wall or dropping a package.
That is a lot of math happening every second.
It is. That requires immense computing power. And computing power requires electricity. And electricity, as we know, generates heat.
Ah, so this is an industrial scale problem. It makes me think of the early days of the Industrial Revolution.
How so?
Well, back then, you couldn't just build a factory anywhere. You needed massive steam engines, and you had to build your factory right next to a rushing river just to handle the water cooling for the machinery. Are we basically reinventing the industrial factory, but for data?
That is a perfect parallel. The old infrastructure of the internet, standard server racks sitting in air-conditioned rooms, literally melts under the strain of AI processing.
Wow.
This is where LG's broader enterprise comes in. LG Energy Solution and LG Electronics are co-designing 800-volt direct current power solutions specifically for NVIDIA.
And why 800 volts specifically?
Because higher voltage allows you to deliver the same amount of power using significantly less current. Less current means you can use thinner cables, and more importantly, it drastically reduces the amount of heat loss during transmission.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
But even with that efficiency, the AI chips themselves, like NVIDIA's new Blackwell GPUs, run incredibly hot. So LG is building advanced liquid cooling systems.
Like actual liquid flowing through the computer.
Exactly. We are talking about coolant distribution units and cold plates, where specialized liquid is pumped directly over the silicon chips to carry the heat away because traditional air cooling simply cannot keep up anymore.
It is incredible to think about the physical resources required to run virtual intelligence. And LG isn't just providing the plumbing for NVIDIA, right? They are bringing their own AI models to the table.
Yes, LG has a sovereign AI model called Xeon.
Right, I've heard of that.
Yeah, and by utilizing NVIDIA's Blackwell GPUs and their NeMo training framework, LG is massively boosting the training efficiency of Xeon. They plan to deploy this highly trained, highly efficient model across all of their physical enterprise businesses, from home appliances to telecommunications.
So if you are listening to this on your commute or at your desk, this is why this matters to you. The next wave of technology is not going to live inside your computer monitor.
Nope, not at all.
It is stepping out into your living room, your warehouse, and your streets. And the demands it places on our physical infrastructure, like our power grids and our cooling resources, are going to be immense.
The digital world is finally acquiring physical kinetics.
Before we wrap up today's exploration, a quick thanks to Old Glory, an iconic music and sports fan merch store. Perfect for the techie in your life. Use promo code SNARFUL for 15% off at oldglory.com.
All right, as we zoom out and look at the connective thread of today's stories, we are witnessing an incredible turning point.
We really are.
On one hand, we have governments like the UK attempting to construct incredibly heavy, legally binding walls around our digital platforms and the very smartphones in our pockets.
All in a desperate bid to protect the most vulnerable among us from the dangers of the internet.
Exactly. And on the exact same day, we see powerhouses like NVIDIA and LG breaking technology out of those digital boundaries entirely.
Yeah, pouring billions into physical robots, autonomous systems, and the massive liquid-cooled power grids necessary to support an AI-driven physical reality. Which leaves us with a rather provocative thought to ponder today. Right now, governments are willing to threaten tech CEOs with actual prison time over the digital safety of the images stored on our phones.
Right.
But what happens tomorrow? When autonomous robots and physical AI become just as ubiquitous in our homes and on our streets as smartphones are today, will those same lawmakers have to resort to threatening executives with jail time to ensure our physical safety?
That's a scary thought.
I mean, when a bad algorithm doesn't just show you a harmful video, but actually drives a machine through your living room wall, the regulatory stakes are going to look very, very different.
The legal battles we are fighting over digital guardrails today might look incredibly quaint compared to the physical guardrails we are going to need tomorrow.
A heavy thought to carry into your Monday, but that is why we are here to connect those dots. We're here to help at Snarful, so reach out on our website if you have any more questions.
That's a wrap on today's top stories. Remember, tech doesn't have to be complicated, and we're here to help connect the dots. If you've got questions or want to learn more, visit us at snarful.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.